Creating a safe and nurturing environment for our children is every parent's goal. The presence of firearms in our home raises many questions about how children and guns can coexist. This film is for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, caregivers, or anyone who has children in their lives that may visit them in their home. My name is Tatiana Whitlock. I became a mother long before guns came into my life. I purchased my first firearm when my daughter was just a baby. And as she and my son grow up together, the logistics and concerns that we have as they grow and their needs change also require us to change how we safely incorporate firearms into our lives and how we educate our children about them. It's my job as their parent to be their primary educator and to provide for them a role model of what it looks like to be a safe and responsible firearms owner. We will cover some of the most frequently asked questions and address many parents' concerns about what it means to have firearms and children in the home. While your family may have a different approach, we'll introduce gun safety practices not only for your children, but for the whole family to gain a healthy respect and appreciation for firearm safety. With every new firearm you purchase, you'll receive a copy of the ATF Youth Handgun Safety Act. While you've probably received one, if not more of these with your purchases over the years, or if you're looking at this for the first time, let's take a minute and review what it says. The misuse of handguns is a leading contributor to juvenile violence and fatalities. Safely storing and securing firearms away from children will help prevent the unlawful possession of handguns by juveniles, stop accidents, and save lives. Federal law prohibits, except in certain limited circumstances, anyone under 18 years of age from knowingly possessing a handgun, or any person from selling, delivering, or otherwise transferring a handgun to a person under 18. A knowing violation of the prohibition against selling, delivering, or otherwise transferring a handgun to a person under the age of 18 is, under certain circumstances, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Remember, it's your responsibility to stay current with state and federal laws and regulations. Before we get into too much detail, let's review the safety rules.
Always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. This is the primary rule of gun safety. A safe direction means that the gun is pointed so that even if it were to go off, it would not cause injury or damage. The key to this rule is to control where the muzzle or front end of the barrel is pointed at all times. Common sense dictates the safest direction, depending on different circumstances.
That rule is very easily translated at the range. You wouldn't cover anything other than the berm and the backstop and your target with your muzzle. Whether you're at the range or at home, your kids need to see you treat that firearm as though it was loaded. You would never point your muzzle at anything you weren't prepared to shoot. That includes yourself, other people, objects, pets. You wouldn't take that risk. If the gun was loaded, you're certainly not going to demonstrate what that would look like to your children with it cleared. Give them a solid example. Show them how to handle the gun consistently, whether it's loaded or not.
Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. When holding a gun, rest your finger on the trigger guard or along the side of the gun until you are actually ready to fire. Do not touch the trigger.
If you're paying attention to this safety rule, you may have noticed that in the movies, on TV, in print, or even at the gun shop, someone will handle a firearm by taking a hold of the grip and putting their finger on the trigger. Obviously, this is a violation of the third safety rule. We would never model that for our children, whether the firearm was loaded or not. We need to teach them about trigger discipline and trigger control, primarily being with a straight trigger finger until your sights are on target.
Always keep the gun unloaded until ready to use. Whenever you pick up a gun, immediately engage the safety device if possible. And if the gun has a magazine, remove it before opening the action and looking into the chambers, which should be clear of ammunition. If you do not know how to open the action or inspect the chambers, leave the gun alone and get help from someone who does.
Be consistent with the firearms you have in your home and on the range. Handle them with care every single time. Never assume that they are unloaded. There are far too many accidents of someone handing a gun to someone else believing that it was unloaded when in fact there was still a round in the chamber. Take the additional step every time you handle a firearm to make sure that it is completely downloaded and cleared. The first question on every parent's mind is, how do I store this firearm in my home? Obviously, hiding the gun out of sight and out of mind probably isn't going to work. The last thing we want to do is to create that treasure hunt, find the Christmas present experience for our children, and they will find them. What we need to do is store the firearms properly and safely to prevent the opportunity for our child to be able to mix ammunition and the gun itself. First thing we're going to do is make sure the gun is downloaded and cleared and that ammunition is stored separately in a locked container. Every new gun comes with a gun lock. This pistol, for example, has been set up so that the lock goes through the action. It will not allow a magazine to be loaded or a round to be chambered and fired. Every case that you purchase, especially with pistols, has a locking feature as well. You can lock the gun, put it in the case and lock the case, or simply put a lock on this case and put it in an area of your home that is inaccessible to your child. That is the bare bones minimum safety measures that you can take as soon as you get the gun and bring it home. Now let me show you some other options for the safe storage of a firearm in your home. If you have the budget and space for a freestanding safe or vault, I highly recommend you invest in one. Not only are they fireproof, theft-proof, but they're also child-proof. Look into the brands and select the best one for your home and needs. They can accommodate not only your firearms, but other valuables that you may want to protect: jewelry, vital documents, and your guns. While you will store your collection of firearms in a vault or safe, the firearm you need to keep accessible for self-defense needs a different safety solution. Here are 3 examples from Gun Vault. What you're looking for is a small vault safe that can either be locked with a key, biometrics, or code. These safes from Gun Vault address those options and give you not 1, but 2 lines of defense to gain access to that gun. While you may not have access to your key in a rushed moment to get to your gun, you'd still have access to your code. These 2 vaults right here also include a biometric feature. It can be programmed for you and your spouse, but not for your child. Each of these safes is lightweight enough and sized appropriately to be accommodated in virtually any room of your home. This one fits nicely in the top drawer of a nightstand. This one as well. You can also put this in a kitchen drawer or other high-traffic areas of your home where you spend the most time with your family. If you needed to get to that gun fast, it would be there where you are most of the time. Or this option here, which is easily fit into a narrow space, like the side of your nightstand. Each one of these options allows you accessibility to your firearm when you need it and fast, but not to your child or to their friends. Kids are curious. Your ability to keep them away from what they don't need to touch is key. You don't have to take drastic measures to do it, just invest in the right pieces of equipment and put them in places that work for you so you can get to them when you need them. Your kids do not need access to these firearms, but you may, and Gun Vault has a number of options for you to choose from. We've all heard of Grandpappy's shotgun stored in the closet by the front door. You may even know somebody that actually chooses to store their home defense firearm that manner. Obviously, if you have kids in your lives, that's not going to be an option. Santa Cruz Gun Locks has a perfect solution for a home defense shotgun or long gun that you need to access quickly but cannot be readily accessible by your child. Of course, we're going to store any firearm in the same home as a child, completely free of ammunition. This shotgun is free and clear of ammo. Santa Cruz has developed this particular bracket and mounting system so that you can attach it to the studs of your home. This gun locking system is easily incorporated into a home, new construction or existing, by mounting it to a stud in a closet or space that you can access out of view and out of reach of your child. There are 3 ways to gain access to the gun. You have a key fob system, standard keys, but if you're like me, you don't sleep with your keys under your pillow. You also don't want to leave your keys someplace your kid could gain access to. Santa Cruz has a solution for that. They've created this wrist fob, just like the one I have on now. Something goes bump in the night, you get out of bed, and you gain access to your gun by swiping it across this panel. For the purposes of demonstration, we have the access panel mounted to the frame. You'd have it mounted in a remote location that you could gain access to quickly. Something goes bump in the night, you get up, swipe the key fob in front of the access panel, and it unlocks your home defense long gun. If your family has chosen to have a long gun for your home defense firearm, make sure you have an appropriate locking system that you can gain access to, but your children can't. With kids in the home, safe storage of your firearms is not an option. It's a requirement. Whether you have one gun or a collection, there are options available to meet your needs. Home protection firearms, how accessible they are to you, or simply keeping your collection and valuables under lock and key and protected from fire theft and your children, it's a requirement that you take seriously. Do as I say, not as I do, just doesn't cut it when it comes to kids and guns. We need to model the actions, attitudes, and habits we expect our children to exhibit. Making guns a taboo is what a lot of families do. However, what that breeds in the children is a sense of curiosity that goes unchecked and a certain level of defiance, where they want to seek them out and see what they can do. What we need to do as parents and guardians, caregivers, babysitters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, if you're an adult with guns in your home and children are present when you're handling them, make them a part of the experience. They need to see how seriously you take that firearm. They need to see you handle it properly, clearing it out every time, watching your muzzle control. They need to see how you safely store the guns and gain an appreciation for why they're stored that way. You'll demystify the gun for that child. You'll take away the curiosity and you'll turn it into another benign tool, just like the lawnmower, that's dangerous, that they should not be playing with. You want to be your child's resource. You want to be their primary educator. Don't let TV, friends, and what they see at the movies be where they get their information about how firearms are properly used. Without you teaching them and showing them and setting that example for them, what other resource do they have? Make sure they're comfortable coming to you and asking questions, and indulge their curiosity with solid answers. Your children will gain an appreciation for firearms by seeing you behave in a consistent manner. It's your opportunity to set the bar high. How soon is too soon to introduce your child to firearms? The answer is pretty simple. They're never too young. We baby-proof our homes, put away poisons, cover electrical outlets, and take measures to make sure they can't get access to the things that could hurt them. We need to do the same thing for firearms. Whether the firearm is new to the household or the kids are, it's another object that could hurt them that's in their space. They need to grow up with an appreciation for what that means. Just like you wouldn't leave a bottle of bleach out for them to drink, you wouldn't leave a firearm in the room with them. You wouldn't allow your toddler to crawl around a pool alone. Same thing with firearms. You wouldn't leave your child alone in a room with a firearm. It's your job as the parent to make sure your child understands, as they grow up from toddlers to pre-K to kindergarten, that a firearm is not okay for them to touch without your supervision and in your presence. It's your responsibility as a parent to make sure your child understands that they are not allowed to touch or interact with a firearm of any kind without your presence and under your supervision. The NRA has created the Eddie the Eagle program. It's a great resource for parents to introduce your kids to some basic safety rules. Your child knows that they can't interact or touch a firearm without your presence and under your supervision. If they see a firearm and you're not there, Eddie the Eagle teaches them to stop, don't touch, leave the room, and go tell an adult. It's 3 very simple steps that a toddler, pre-K, kindergarten child can easily grasp and understand and execute. It's your responsibility as the parent to create that safe, nurturing environment. We take all kinds of measures to make sure our home is set up for the safety of our children. A firearm is just another object in the home that can cause them harm. Your kids need to learn an appreciation and respect for that tool. It's also a time at an early age for them to be desensitized to the firearm, just like the kitchen cutlery. They need to know it's something they can interact with. And it's not something mystical, interesting, or intriguing. And they're not curious about it because it's always been a part of their life. Your child is never too young to start being taught about firearm safety. In fact, the younger they are, the better. When you and I were growing up, we had Pac-Man, we had Super Mario Brothers. Today, our preteens are exposed to a level of violence we had no idea existed until we got a lot older. From the video games that they play to the movies they watch, they're seeing a whole new level of pretty realistic content. But what they're not grasping is the fact that the tools that are being shown, the firearms that are being displayed, though they may look cool and spark that curiosity, have that cool guy factor, that outside influence isn't something that's in line with your family's expectation for how they perceive and interact with firearms. Preteen years are a great opportunity to introduce your child to the mechanism that is the gun, to take away that cool factor and turn the firearm into an object with gears and springs, a chunk of metal. Take away the excitement and make it a mechanical object. A great opportunity to introduce your child to the machine that is the firearm is after a trip to the range. You come home, clear the gun out, remove all ammunition from the room, and lay your firearm out to be field stripped and cleaned. Introduce your child to the gun that way. Invite them to participate, perhaps not to touch, but to be present as you take the gun apart, removing each component, introducing them to what that component does and what it's called. You might be surprised to find how bored your child gets with the experience very quickly. Suddenly, the gun isn't such a cool thing, it's a chore. And if you require them to participate in that chore every time you come home from the range, they're probably not going to be too excited to go out of their way to find it. On the flip side, your child might be really intrigued. You might be surprised to find you have an engineer on your hands or the next Olympic gold medalist shooter. By having your child participate in the cleaning, field stripping, reassembling, and safely storing the firearm, you're able to take away the fiction and instill reality. The best policy with any teenager is to have an open door policy. They need to know they can come to you with questions and concerns about pretty much anything in their life. The outside influences that come with being a teen are much greater than when they were younger. Suddenly, peer pressure and bullying get taken up a notch. Your kid may be a good kid, but how can you make sure that they're not in a car where the driver's been drinking? You need to make sure your child is capable of stepping up and saying no thank you, removing themselves from the situation. Sound familiar? Sound like Eddie the Eagle? As they grow up, they need to know that those rules still apply, only now they take ownership of them outside of the house, when they're with their friends, when they're out in public. They need to know that they'll be held accountable for their actions, good or bad, and that you support them making good choices and good decisions. If your child expresses interest in firearms that goes beyond your ability to teach or perhaps your own interest level or knowledge base, there are plenty of opportunities to provide that child a safe, structured learning environment. There are programs out there like the Boy Scouts, JROTC, ROTC, Civil Air Patrol, IPSC and IDPA, and hunter safety programs. If your child's interests go beyond even an organized group activity like the ones we've mentioned, and your own skill level or ability to teach them, sometimes your child's going to learn better from somebody that isn't a parent. Go out and find an instructor. Do your homework on them. Make sure they're reputable, have their credentials, and they're somebody that you trust with your child. Granted, you'll be present for the lessons as you should, but the tools, the instructor, and the facility are all appropriate, safe, and mentored, creating an optimal learning environment for your child. Make sure that the mentors and teachers you choose for your child share your family's values and attitudes about firearms. Just like driving a car, proper training, practice, and education is the key to having a safe experience with that machine. Firearm is no different. Make sure that the teachers and mentors that you provide your child to learn share your family's values and attitudes about firearms. As parents, how do we address the double standard that toy guns bring into our child's lives? We work so hard to instill a set of values and expectations in our child. about firearm safety and safe gun handling with the real thing, then we give them a toy gun and they're allowed to play and role play in a very different manner. Your child needs to be able to clearly identify the difference between a toy and the real thing. Let me show you an example of a toy gun that creates no confusion. This looks nothing like a real gun. It doesn't quite function just like a real gun. Everything about it, graphically, functionally, is a toy. This isn't unsafe for your child to play with, whereas a real gun is clearly not something that they should be allowed to handle without your presence or supervision. In my household, for example, look-alike guns are not a part of my child's toy collection. We don't allow any opportunity for our children to be confused about the toy and the real thing. On the flip side of the coin, there are real guns that have toy-like qualities or appeal to a child. And while your child may know the difference with their friends, for some folks a pink gun, a purple gun, a green gun is totally appropriate and something that appeals to you as an aesthetic. Just make sure your child is clear the difference between a pink toy gun and your personal carry gun or collector's gun that may have a color on it that looks like a toy. You've done your job educating your child about firearm safety. You trust your child. You understand that they're going to make good decisions when you're around or when you're not. But what happens when their friends come to visit? Or when your child is outside of your home and visiting a friend's home? You don't necessarily know that that other household has the same set of safe handling expectations or storage that you do at yours. Firearms are an excellent opportunity to start talking about peer pressure with your child. They understand what you expect from them in your home, and when they're outside of the home, they may want to show off. They may want to show off by the fact that they know how to behave and leave the presence of a firearm, or they may want to impress their friends with how much they know about a gun. Whether you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, or a grandparent, if you have firearms in the home, they need to be secured at all times. As your children get older, you may not know about every play date. Teenagers' friends come over after school all the time unannounced. Don't leave any opportunity for a child, yours or a friend, to gain access to a firearm. They need to be locked and secured at all times. Your child needs to have an appreciation for the fact that a firearm is never okay for them to touch without your presence or direct supervision. That applies for in your home and outside of the home. Other families may not have the same best practices that yours does, and your child needs to know that the Eddie the Eagle rules apply to them at all ages. Your children need to know that when they visit another family's home, that the same set of expectations you have for them while they're at home with you still apply. For example, if you don't come from a hunting family and your child goes to visit a family who predominantly hunts, they may store their equipment differently than you store yours. Your child may be invited to interact or look at another person's collection. Firearm safety rules are universal. They apply to everyone. Your child needs to know that not everyone may know the rules. Outside of the home, your child may be faced with a situation where a firearm is inappropriately introduced in a social setting. While they may not have all of the answers, they need to know that you support them in removing themselves from that situation. They need to know that they can reach out to you, ask you questions, and call you up to take them home anytime. My grandmother had a phrase, little children, little problems. Big children, big problems. When your kids are younger, you have an opportunity while they're living under your roof all the time to correct the attitudes and behavior patterns that may not be in line with your family's standards. What do I mean by that? If they model something that they see on TV, perhaps that's not something that your family supports. An attitude about a gun, a nonchalant one perhaps, it's not okay with you and your family. There's an opportunity at that time to put that in check. From movies to video games. Teenagers and preteens, whether we like it or not, are starting to become exposed to things like drugs, alcohol, peer pressure, and bullying. All of those are things we can't control as parents, that we hope our children don't experience, but they probably will within the course of their childhood growing up. In addition to the normal challenges that most teenagers experience, they may be on medication. If your child is on prescription medication, make sure you're aware of the side effects. Some may enhance suicidal tendencies. You need to keep a close eye on your kids. Monitor their behavior. Note any changes in their behavior, if they're sulky or moody. And if you have that gut feeling that something really isn't right, perhaps they're not even willing to talk to you about it. If you get that gut feeling, it's your responsibility as a parent to take action. These actions can be unbeknownst to your child. You can simply change the code on your safe and on your lock boxes, and maybe you take the keys and put them in a safe deposit box somewhere outside of the property that your child just can't get access to. Until that phase passes, you've taken additional measures to secure your firearms in your home so that your child can't get to them in a moment where perhaps they're not thinking clearly. And if you really have serious concerns, you also have the opportunity to remove your firearms from your home and put them in another location where they're secured, perhaps a family member's home that also has a safe. You have many opportunities to prevent bad things from happening. I'm not here to scare you or throw scare tactics at you. This is a reality for an adult that a child perhaps doesn't grasp yet. The consequences are real. They go beyond just the impact of your child. It can impact your entire family and other families as well. We've all seen what happens on the news. It's our responsibility as parents to be cognizant of our children, of their behaviors, to teach them when they're young, as soon as possible, the right attitudes, safety, handling skills, and as they get older, address the challenges that naturally come with growing up. It doesn't have to be a negative experience. Just be aware, alert, and be present in your child's life. Kids love to brag and show off for their friends. You need to teach your child that firearms are not a status symbol, a show of strength, or a toy. They're to be taken seriously at all times. You also need to open up a conversation with your child so that they appreciate the fact that your collection isn't up for public knowledge. Your kids' friends don't need to know how many firearms you have or what kind they may be. There's no reason to spark additional curiosity from the outside world in, any more than it is to make the value of your collection publicly known. Your personal collection isn't up for public discussion. Your child needs to know that your firearms collection and how your family feels about firearms is truly family business, and perhaps something that's a conversation best kept at home. You've taken all of the necessary steps to secure firearms safely in your home. You provided educational opportunities for your child to learn more. And you've created an open line of communication so that if your child has questions or concerns, they know they can come to you for the answers. Just remember, firearm safety starts at home.
Pantio.